Today, on this week's Tech News Roundup, Ubisoft proves that even if you break up with Steam, you're never gone for too long. In the face of disappointing sales, Ubisoft has made the announcement that they're rekindling their relationship with the Seminole store. Also, Valve removed the arbitration clause in their Steam subscriber agreement. Technically, that means you can now sue Steam. Is this a case of good guy Gabe, and why did they decide to make that change now? I'll tell you everything you need to know about this update. California has just signed a law that will force digital storefronts to tell customers they're just getting a license to use digital media rather than suggesting they actually own it. Savvy consumers have known this is true for some time, but how will this law affect Steam? Capcom is bringing classics back to PC. We just learned about the system requirements for Monster Hunter Wilds, and a new Steam-branded controller has gone on sale in Japan. What's good, Deck Gang? My name is Rich. This is my weekly Deck News Roundup, where I bring you the latest news around Steam Deck, other PC handhelds, and PC gaming at large. There are chapters for everything, so let's go ahead and get started with that first story, shall we? Ubisoft has seen better days as their share price dipped to a 10-year low. One of the reasons for the dip is the softer than expected launch of Star Wars Outlaws. In a now leaked internal memo, CEO Yves Guillemot took full accountability for the events that led to the disappointing sales of their biggest release of the year. Just kidding. Instead of taking full accountability, he said, quote, "In today's ultra-competitive market, players expect extraordinary experiences and ultra-polished games on day one. We need to continue to improve when it comes to fine-tuning our games and delivering outstanding gameplay," end quote. Maybe just me, but that seems like the CEO of a gaming company has just learned for the first time that actually gamers do not want ordinary gameplay experiences and unpolished games on day one. But don't worry guys, Ubisoft has learned their lesson. Well, I delivered that as a joke, but Ubisoft are earnestly making changes that are going to benefit gamers. In a letter to investors, they said that they are making the following changes for Assassin's Creed Shadows. First, they've delayed the game in hopes to deliver a more polished title. Second, they're departing from their traditional season pass model, meaning that you won't have to wait a few days to play simply because you weren't willing to pre-order this game. Finally, the memo said that Assassin's Creed Shadows will mark the return of Ubi's new releases on Steam day one. Likewise, the Steam release date of Star Wars Outlaws has also been revealed. That game will reach Gaben's Palace on November 21st, less than 3 months since its release on Ubisoft Connect and the Epic Games Store. Honestly, each of these are welcome decisions, and I hope they represent an earnest attempt to gain back consumer trust. It's going to be a long road back, and to be honest, I'm not sure how much runway current leadership at Ubisoft has. Reportedly, investors are calling for a change in leadership, and at this rate, it's hard to blame them. Late last week, a new blog post went up on Steam titled "The Updated Steam Subscriber Agreement." You may have seen a notification pop up on your Steam inbox, and you may wonder what the heck this is. Well, the point of the update, as the blog post goes on to reveal, is the elimination of the forced arbitration clause. Forced arbitration is when a company requires the consumer to resolve their dispute with the company via binding arbitration as opposed to through the legal system. In their blog post, Valve said that the new agreement, quote, "now provides that any disputes are to go forward in court instead of arbitration," end quote. Famously, Disney recently tried to compel arbitration when a widower sued the conglomerate after his wife suffered a fatal allergic reaction, allegedly as a result of her meal at a Disney park restaurant. That motion was eventually dropped, but it sparked a ton of outrage at these sort of forced arbitration clauses. This change from Valve is a big win for consumers, no question about it. But there is, of course, at least a little more to the story. Valve has been the target of a number of legal actions from various law firms. The list is long, so hopefully I get my order of events correct here. First, Wolfire Games initiated a class action lawsuit on behalf of developers and consumers. In that lawsuit, Valve filed a motion to compel arbitration. That motion was unsuccessful in the case of developers, but successful in the case of consumers. That meant that developers could proceed with the class action, but consumers would have to go through arbitration. As a result, law firms like Zyger LLC, Mason LLP, and Bucher Law PLLC decided that they would take on these consumers as clients and initiate something called mass arbitration. As their own slides point out, mass arbitration takes advantage of the arbitration clause and flips it back onto the corporation. Most of those clauses often require the company in question to pay arbitration fees to an arbitration provider upfront, often a minimum of approximately $3,000 per case. These law firms are looking to secure tens of thousands of clients and initiate arbitration for each of them simultaneously. That means that if they have 75,000 clients and 75,000 demands for arbitration, that would cost a company like Valve $225 million simply as the cost of admission. In Zyger slides, they point out how effective this strategy can be and how the potential returns for their law firm would be considerable. Valve didn't like this, so they decided to sue Zyger LLC in particular, as reported by Reuters. Zyger filed a motion to dismiss Valve's complaint, and the court granted the dismissal, meaning that Valve would be vulnerable to this mass arbitration attack. That brings us to present day, where Valve is now removing the arbitration clause in an attempt to prevent any further mass arbitration. They even attempt to apply this retroactively, saying that, quote, "You and Valve agree that all disputes and claims between you and Valve, including any dispute or claim that arose before the existence of this or any prior agreement, shall be commenced and maintained exclusively in any state or federal court located in King County, Washington, having subject matter jurisdiction." For those playing at home, Valve tried to force arbitration, but when that backfired on them, they tried to retroactively force legal proceedings. It's unclear how this is going to play out with Zyger and other law firms who already seem to be embroiled in their conflict against Valve. Additionally, you may be wondering what happens if you don't agree to these new terms. In regard to that, Valve says, quote, "Your continued use of your Steam account more than 30 calendar days after the entry into force of the changes will constitute your acceptance of the changes. If you don't agree to the changes, your only remedy is to terminate your Steam account or to cease use of your Steam wallet. Valve shall not have any obligation to refund any credits remaining on your Steam wallet in this case," end quote. In other words, either you agree to Valve's terms or you lose your entire Steam library. Of course, these terms seem to apply more specifically to consumers outside of the European Union and the United Kingdom, and for subscribers within the EU and the UK, Valve basically just says, quote, "You may bring proceedings in the courts of the place where you are domiciled," end quote. Situations like this make it clearer than ever that you do not own your digital games, but California Governor Gavin Newsom wants to make that even clearer. Governor Newsom has just signed into law Bill AB 2426. It goes into effect next year, and the goal of this law is to ban digital storefronts from using terms like buy or purchase. As reported by The Verge, storefronts will instead have to tell customers that they're getting a license that can be revoked, as well as provide a list of all the restrictions that come along with it, end quote. Notably, the new law will not apply to stores that offer permanent offline downloads, so naturally GOG, previously known as Good Old Games, took this as an opportunity to gloat at least a little bit. They got on Twitter and tweeted, quote, "If only there was a storefront that actually lets you own your games," end quote. Listen, you gotta hand it to GOG. They are, in fact, one of the few gaming storefronts that let you actually own your games, and that certainly is worthy of praise. As for Steam, we discussed this on the Fandom Deck Discord, and there are at least a number of places where the word purchase or purchasing shows up, so Valve may have to update this verbiage. Additionally, the Steam subscriber agreement we discussed in the previous segment already makes it clear that you don't own Steam games anyway. Specifically, it states, quote, "The content and services are licensed, not sold. Your license confers no title or ownership in the content and services. To make use of the content and services, you must have a Steam account, and you may be required to be running the Steam client and maintaining a connection to the internet," end quote. Again, this should not come as a surprise to savvy consumers, but not all consumers may be aware, so it's good to see a law like this to at least help spread that awareness. Steam has just set yet another record for concurrent users, now reaching 38 million users on Steam at once. This is a tremendous milestone and truly shows that the growth for Steam right now is absolutely insane. January of 2023 was the first time that Steam reached 33 million concurrent users, and then they didn't reach another million marker for over a year. But since March 2024, Steam has beaten their PB several times, climbing from 34 million to 35, 36, 37, and now 38, all in 6 short months. Undoubtedly, Steam has had some amazing games get released in the last year, including record-breaking titles like Baldur's Gate 3 and Black Myth: Wukong. Additionally, we've seen continued updates to extremely popular titles like Cyberpunk 2077 and No Man's Sky. And then there's the success of Steam Deck, which not only added new Steam users, but also incentivized existing users to be more active on Steam. At least I would say that's what happened for me. Who knows what else is in store for Valve and Steam as we head into the holiday season. The first officially licensed Steam controller has just been released in Japan. It's called the Wireless Hori Pad for Steam, and notably it lacks trackpads. It does, however, come with capacitive touch analog sticks, as well as 2 customizable back buttons in addition to 2 buttons on the bottom front that can be customized as well. Finally, it has a gyroscope and 2 dedicated Steam buttons, just like the Steam Deck. One to have access to the Steam menu and overlay, and the other to get access to the quick access menu. Getting your hands on this outside of Japan may not be cheap, but I have seen some people selling them on eBay. I personally picked one up there, and I'm hoping to receive it sometime in the next week. There's also a page for this product on playasia.com, but it has yet to go on sale there. Let me know if you're one of the 10 people picking this up, and we can talk about it in the comments. We don't often get new Steam Deck startup videos in the Point Shop, but when we do, they're usually quite good. This week, we get one from Naughty Dog. This is a custom The Last of Us Steam Deck wallpaper that was apparently made by growing real fungus. There's no sign of a Caveman Joel Steam avatar, but that's okay, I will settle for this. Next up, Arch Linux has announced a collaboration with Valve. In their announcement, they say that, quote, Valve is generously providing backing for 2 critical projects that will have a huge impact on our distribution, a build service infrastructure, and a secure signing enclave, end quote. This should be very helpful to the Arch Linux team, and theoretically, it's going to help them get updates out the door a lot quicker. There's nothing material here that would benefit Steam users right this moment, but presumably this is a great contribution to Linux in general. Capcom released the PC system requirements for Monster Hunter Wilds last week, and unsurprisingly, it's not looking so hot for the Steam Deck. You can check the specs out on their website, and the minimum required specs say that they would be for an upscale 1080p resolution at 30 FPS. The minimum CPU would be something like the Ryzen 5 3600, but Monster Hunter Wilds is calling for a minimum of 16GB of RAM, as well as a minimum GPU of either the GeForce GTX 1660 Super or the Radeon RX 5600 XT. Again, keep in mind that these requirements are for a 1080p being upscaled from a 720p resolution and 30 frames per second, with both the GPU requirement and the RAM requirement being pretty much out of reach for the Steam Deck. Of course, Dragon's Dogma 2 wasn't exactly a good experience on deck either. Still though, if you have a craving for Monster Hunter on the go, you can still play Monster Hunter World and Monster Hunter Rise on the Steam Deck. Both of those games are consistently in the top played Steam Deck games, so you can't go wrong there. On the subject of Capcom games, it seems like Capcom may be bringing some of their classic titles back to Steam soon. This includes games like Lost Planet 2 and Street Fighter Cross Tekken. Mostly, these are Capcom titles that were released to Steam during the early to mid 2010s, and they were all shipped with a relic of their time known as Games for Windows Live, or GFWL. GFWL was retired, and so Capcom went ahead and delisted these games from Steam with a message on the store page that says they're aware of the problems that customers are having related to GFWL, and that they're, quote, temporarily disabling the purchase option on Steam while we investigate the matter further, end quote. That message was posted approximately 3 years ago, and the games have remained mostly dormant since then. Recently, however, data miners have noticed that Capcom is updating these games in a way that is similar to updates they made to Resident Evil 5 when they eventually removed GFWL from that game. Hopefully this means what we all think it means, and these games can be brought back to Steam without the GFWL requirement. Additionally, we have confirmation that Legacy of Kain, Soul Reaver 1 and 2 Remastered are coming to Steam on December 10th. This has been a long rumored project, so it's nice to have this confirmed. In a PlayStation blog post, Aspyr said they were able to get the original source code from Crystal Dynamics and that they can, quote, deliver the same exact combat, puzzles, and boss fights with the same balance and feel as the original, end quote. They go on to say that this title will toggle between classic and modern game art on the fly without ever having a hit to performance. There are also improvements to controls and the camera. There's a new map and a compass, as well as a new photo mode and, of course, achievements. Aspyr did a great job with their previous Crystal Dynamics remaster, Tomb Raider 1-3, so I am cautiously optimistic about this project. Horizon Zero Dawn Remastered was officially announced on the PlayStation State of Play, and it's coming to PC as well on October 31st. Thankfully, Sony is making this a $10 upgrade to people that already own this game, and yes, that goes for Steam owners as well. Personally, the trailer for the remaster wasn't terribly compelling, but I'm glad to see a reasonable upgrade path from Sony here. Metaphor ReFantazio got a playable demo this week. It's a beefy demo that's leaving a good impression on many players. Your save in the demo is going to carry over to the full game, and thankfully this is one of those demos with its own store page, so you can read reviews like this one that says it is a quote stunning display of creativity, and Atlas once again proves they know how to build rich, immersive worlds. The art style is nothing short of breathtaking, weaving fantasy elements with a deeply imaginative visual design. End quote. Some people did point out that the demo has performance issues. You can watch a gameplay video on Steam Deck from Deck Wizard, and I'll say, to me, it at least does look worthwhile. Check it out if you get the chance. All right, Deck Gang, that's going to do it for this week's episode. Hope you're all having a wonderful week. Deck Gang out. Goodbye.